My wife told me she wanted an open marriage. She said it was about freedom, about honesty, about exploring herself. But the truth was, she already had someone else in mind. She thought I would accept it, stay loyal, stay at home, while she lived a double life in the open. She thought I was weak enough to let it slide. She was wrong. I didn't tell her that. I just nodded, played along, and let her believe she was the one in control. But I was already planning what I would do and how it would end. When she first brought up the idea, it was a Tuesday night after dinner. She had been unusually quiet all day, barely looking at me, scrolling on her phone with that half smile that I had started to notice more often lately. We had been married for 7 years, together for almost 10, and I thought I knew her better than anyone. I thought I could read every flicker in her expression, every little habit, but lately it felt like she was someone else entirely, someone living in a world I wasn't invited into. That night, she waited until I was halfway through a beer before she cleared her throat and said she wanted to talk. I remember the way she twisted the hem of her sweater, nervous but also strangely excited. She told me she had been reading articles, listening to podcasts about ethical non-monogamy. She said monogamy was unnatural, outdated, that maybe we needed to evolve as a couple. I almost laughed because it sounded so rehearsed, like she had practiced it in front of the mirror. I asked her straight out if there was someone else. She didn't even flinch. She smiled, just a little, and said no, this was about us, about growth. But her eyes told a different story. I knew her too well. She was lying, and badly. In that moment, something inside me went cold. I didn't argue. I didn't call her out. Instead, I agreed. I told her I loved her, and if this was what she thought would make us stronger, then I would try. She seemed surprised at how easily I accepted it, but also relieved. She kissed me that night like everything was normal, like we hadn't just changed the entire foundation of our marriage with a single conversation. The next week, she stayed out late for the first time. She said she was grabbing drinks with coworkers, but she came home at midnight smelling like cologne I didn't own. I didn't ask questions. I pretended to be half asleep on the couch, the TV flickering in the background, my chest burning with every second she moved around the kitchen like nothing had happened. She hummed while putting a glass in the sink, and that little tune almost broke me. I wanted to scream, to demand she tell me who he was, but instead I just muttered goodnight and went to bed. Over the next month, her pattern became clear. She was always working late, always with some excuse that barely held together, and always coming home glowing, her cheeks flushed in a way that hadn't been for me in a long time. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't been enough. Maybe I had stopped trying, gotten too comfortable. But then I remembered all the times that I had been there for her, every sacrifice I had made, every plan I had put on hold because she wasn't ready. And here she was, throwing it all away for someone who wasn't even brave enough to face me. What she didn't know was that I had already decided I wouldn't just sit back and watch. She thought she had me trapped, that I would quietly accept whatever scrap she gave me while she lived her fantasy. But I was done being the nice guy. I started making my own plans. I downloaded dating apps. I started going to the gym more, cleaning myself up, not for her, but for me. I wanted to see what was out there, to remind myself I wasn't some pathetic husband begging for her attention. At first, it was awkward, talking to strangers, trying to flirt again after years of marriage. But soon it became easier. And then I met someone. Someone who wasn't just a distraction, but a real connection. Someone who actually saw me, listened to me, valued me. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt alive. I didn't tell my wife. She didn't ask anyway. She assumed I was staying faithful, waiting at home like a loyal dog while she played. That was her biggest mistake. Because every night she thought she was winning, Every night she walked through that door smug with the scent of another man on her skin, I was already building something stronger. Something she couldn't take away from me. Something that would eventually turn her little game inside out. I never told her about the woman I met, and that secrecy became my lifeline, my little rebellion against the circus she had turned our marriage into. Her name was Claire, and from the first conversation I had with her, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, being heard. We matched on an app one night when I couldn't sleep, lying in the dark while my wife was working late again. At first, I thought it was just casual, maybe some texting, a distraction from the pit in my stomach, but Claire was different. She wasn't flashy or dramatic. She wasn't trying to play games. She was just real. She asked about me, about my interests, about my life, not about what car I drove or how much money I made. The more we talked, the more I realized how starved I had been for simple human connection. After a couple weeks, we met for coffee. I was nervous, palms sweaty, heart racing like I was a teenager again. But when she smiled at me across that small cafe table, I forgot all of it. She made me laugh, genuinely laugh, the way I hadn't in so long. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like the pathetic husband being strung along by a wife with new ideas about marriage. Meanwhile, at home, my wife's facade started to crack. She was still sneaking around, still whispering texts into her phone with that half smile, but now she seemed irritated with me when she got home. She accused me of being distant, of not engaging with her enough, as if I was supposed to wait at the door wagging my tail every time she threw me a bone. The irony was almost laughable. She was out screwing someone else, and suddenly I was the problem. But I played my role well. I nodded, apologized, told her I would try harder. She bought it. Because she wanted to. She wanted to believe I was still wrapped around her finger, and that illusion gave me more time. Claire and I grew closer. We didn't rush into anything physical right away, though God knows I wanted to, but what made it powerful was that she cared about me as a person first. She asked about my marriage, and I told her the truth, though not every detail. She knew my wife and I had an open marriage now, but she didn't pry too much. She says she didn't want to be someone's rebound. Didn't want to be used just because I was hurting, and that respect only drew me in deeper. We spent hours walking, talking, grabbing dinner, watching movies, and little by little, she filled in all the empty spaces my wife had carved out of me. When we finally did cross that line, it wasn't out of desperation. It was because I wanted her, all of her, and she wanted me too. And here's the thing my wife never expected. I didn't feel guilty. Not for a second. She had opened this door, she had shoved me through it, and she thought I'd stand frozen on the other side. But instead, I found something worth keeping. And every night I lay in bed next to her, listening to her type away on her phone or whispering to it when she thought I was asleep, I felt this quiet, burning satisfaction. She thought she had all the power. She thought she was the one making the rules. But I knew her secret, and she didn't know mine. The first real crack appeared when she came home late one Friday, drunk and careless, her hair messy, her shirt buttoned wrong. She stumbled into the bedroom and collapsed on the bed without even changing. I just stood there, looking at her. This woman I had once thought was my partner for life, now reduced to a stranger who couldn't even keep her lies neat. The next morning, she tried to act normal, making pancakes, humming in the kitchen, pretending like she hadn't just rolled in hours after she said she'd be home. I played along, smiling, asking how her coworkers were. She looked me in the eye and lied through her teeth, and I realized I wasn't even angry anymore. I was watching her dig her own grave, one little shovelful at a time. But then something happened that I didn't expect. She started noticing me. One night she asked if I was seeing someone. It came out sharp, like she had been holding it in for days, maybe weeks. I looked at her, kept my face calm, and said, "Why would you ask that?" She said I'd been different lately, more confident, more distant, less eager to please her. She said I looked better, like I'd been working out, like I cared more about how I dressed. And she wasn't wrong, because Claire made me want to be better, not for her, but for myself. I shrugged it off, told her she was imagining things, but in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time: fear. That fear only grew over the next few weeks. She got clingier, more demanding, like she suddenly remembered she was supposed to be my wife. She wanted to go on dates, wanted me to compliment her, wanted me to be jealous of her nights out. But the harder she tried, the more obvious it became. She was losing control, and she hated it. I never gave her the satisfaction of admitting anything. I let her stew in her paranoia, let her wonder if I was out there doing exactly what she was doing. And the truth was, I was doing more. I wasn't just cheating, I was building something real. Something she couldn't compete with, no matter how many late nights she spent with her secret lover. Because Claire wasn't a fling. Claire was my revenge, even if she didn't know it. My wife had wanted an open marriage, but what she didn't realize was that once you open a door, you can't control what comes through it. And she was about to find out exactly what that meant.
The shift in her behavior was almost comical to me. The same woman who had pushed for an open marriage under the guise of self-discovery was suddenly acting like the jealous girlfriend she used to mock. She began checking my phone when she thought I wasn't looking, asking who I was texting, where I was going, when I'd be back. The irony of it all nearly made me laugh in her face, but I kept my composure, always calm, always collected. Because I knew the tighter she gripped, the faster I would slip through her fingers. She started planning date nights again, insisting we needed to reconnect, suggesting vacations or little weekend trips. And while she framed it as fixing our marriage, I could see the desperation in her eyes. She wasn't worried about our love. She was worried about losing control over me. I played along enough to keep her guessing, but never enough to reassure her. I'd agree to dinner, but spend the whole time half distracted, not fawning over her like I used to. I'd compliment her appearance once in a while, but in a way that felt obligatory, not genuine, and she noticed. I could see her scanning my face every time, waiting for that old look of admiration that used to come so naturally, and when it wasn't there, she'd tense up. Meanwhile, my relationship with Claire only deepened. She had no idea she was part of a bigger picture, but in a way, she saved me from drowning. Every moment with her reminded me that I wasn't broken, that I wasn't some unlovable fool my wife could discard. With Claire, there was laughter, intimacy, honesty, everything my marriage had lost long ago. And the more time I spent with her, the more I realized my wife's attempt at an open marriage had backfired spectacularly. She wanted freedom, but instead she had built a cage for herself, because now she couldn't stand the idea that I might actually take advantage of what she had offered. It reached a breaking point one night when she came storming into the living room while I was getting ready to head out. I told her I was meeting an old friend for drinks, and she snapped. She accused me of lying, demanded to know who I was really seeing. Her voice shaking, her eyes wet with tears she tried to hold back. This was the same woman who had been sneaking off with her secret lover for months, standing in front of me acting like the betrayed spouse. The hypocrisy was almost too much to take. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You wanted this. Remember, you're the one who asked for an open marriage." She froze, like the words had hit her harder than she expected, because in that moment she was confronted with her own choices. She had opened this door, and now she couldn't slam it shut just because she didn't like what was on the other side. She tried to backpedal, tried to say that she thought it would bring us closer, that maybe she had been wrong, that maybe we needed boundaries. But I knew the truth. She wasn't worried about us. She was worried about me leaving her behind, about me finding someone who actually treated me with respect. The paranoia only got worse from there. She started texting me constantly when I was out, asking where I was, who I was with, what I was doing. If I didn't respond within minutes, she'd blow up my phone with call after call, and when I finally picked up, she'd act like nothing was wrong. Like she just missed me. The irony was rich because I remembered all those nights I sat alone, staring at the clock while she was quote-unquote working late, and she never once checked in on me. Now the roles were reversed, and I reveled in the quiet power shift. I didn't rub it in her face, I didn't gloat. That would have been too easy, too obvious. Instead, I let her stew in uncertainty. I let her imagine what I might be doing, who I might be with, and that ate at her far more than any fight could have. But then she made a mistake. One night she came home earlier than expected, and I wasn't there. My jacket was gone, my phone wasn't on the counter, and she must have spiraled. When I walked in an hour later, she was waiting, pacing the living room with her arms crossed, eyes red from crying. She demanded to know where I had been. I told her the truth, that I had been with Claire. I didn't say her name, but I told her there was someone else, someone who cared about me in ways she hadn't in years. I watched the blood drain from her face, watched her hands tremble as she realized I wasn't playing pretend anymore. I wasn't the safe, loyal husband she could walk all over. I was someone who had options, someone who could leave. And that terrified her. She broke down then, sobbing, saying she didn't mean for things to get this way, that she thought we were strong enough to handle it, that maybe she had been wrong, that maybe we needed boundaries. But I knew the truth. She wasn't worried about us. She was worried about me leaving her behind, about me finding someone who actually treated me with respect. I played along enough to keep her guessing, but never enough to reassure her. I'd agree to dinner, but spend the whole time half distracted, not fawning over her like I used to. I'd compliment her appearance once in a while, but in a way that felt obligatory, not genuine. And she noticed. I could see her scanning my face every time, waiting for that old look of admiration that used to come so naturally, and when it wasn't there, she'd tense up. Meanwhile, my relationship with Claire only deepened. She had no idea she was part of a bigger picture, but in a way she saved me from drowning. Every moment with her reminded me that I wasn't broken, that I wasn't some unlovable fool my wife could discard. With Claire, there was laughter, intimacy, honesty, everything my marriage had lost long ago.
Once the balance shifted, I stopped hiding the satisfaction I felt. I didn't flaunt Claire in her face, but I didn't protect my wife from the truth either. If I wanted to go out, I went. If I came home late, I didn't invent excuses. I let her stew in it. Every time she asked questions, I gave vague answers, just enough to feed her paranoia without giving her clarity. She had no idea what I was really doing, and that uncertainty drove her insane. And that was part of the revenge. I wanted her to feel the same sick twisting in her stomach I had felt every night she snuck out with her lover. I wanted her to understand that powerlessness, that hollow ache, and I wanted her to know it was her own fault. She tried to stop me one night by suddenly announcing she didn't want an open marriage anymore, that she wanted to close it, that we should recommit to each other. I almost laughed at the desperation in her voice. She had expected me to collapse in relief, to thank her for finally choosing me again. But instead, I told her calmly that she didn't get to rewrite the rules just because she didn't like how the game was going. I reminded her that this was her idea, that she had insisted it would make us stronger, and that she had begged me to accept it. She went pale when I said that, because she realized she had opened a door that would never close. From that night forward, I started planting seeds. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, I didn't even argue. Instead, I gave her little truths she couldn't unhear. I told her I was happy for the first time in years. I told her I finally felt seen. I told her that someone else appreciated me in ways she never had. Each word was a dagger, subtle and deliberate, and I could see how they cut deeper than any fight could have. She started unraveling. She drank more, stayed home less, avoided me when she could, but also clung to me desperately when we were in the same room. It was pathetic to watch. The strong, independent woman who had once claimed she was too evolved for monogamy was now reduced to tears over the possibility of losing the husband she thought she had trapped forever. But I wasn't finished. I wanted her lover exposed too. For months, she had treated me like a fool, sneaking around, thinking I wouldn't notice, so I began doing what I should have done earlier. I collected evidence. I went through her phone one night while she was in the shower, snapping photos of her messages, saving screenshots of her conversations. I didn't confront her with them. Not yet. Instead, I quietly built a case, documenting every lie, every little betrayal, every smug word she had sent to this man. I didn't know who he was at first, but the more I dug, the clearer it became. He wasn't just some stranger. He was a married coworker. He had a wife and kids of his own, and my wife was nothing more than his thrill on the side. When I realized that, my plan crystallized.
I could have exposed her immediately. I could have screamed, shown her the screenshots, burned her with her own words, but that would have been too easy, too short. Instead, I reached out to his lover. At first, I kept it vague, just a polite message asking if she had a moment to talk. She was cautious, as anyone would be, but when I sent her the screenshots, I could feel the weight of her silence through the phone. She thanked me. She said she had suspected but never had proof. And that's when I knew the real damage was about to begin. A week later, my wife came home shaken, pale, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Her lover's wife had confronted him, and apparently it had gotten ugly. She asked me if I had said anything, if I had done something. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Why would I? This was your choice, wasn't it?" Watching her flinch, watching her swallow hard and pretend like she believed me was delicious. She wanted to accuse me, but she couldn't, because that would mean admitting everything. So she sat there in silence, twisting her wedding ring, trying not to fall apart. Meanwhile, I continued with Claire. She had no idea of the drama behind the scenes, no idea she was part of a bigger revenge story. But she didn't need to. She was the one bright spot in all of this, the reminder that I wasn't broken, that I wasn't doomed to stay with a woman who had thrown me away for something meaningless, and every moment I spent with her was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. My wife could sense it. She saw how I looked at my phone with a small smile, how I dressed better when I went out, and how I no longer begged for her approval. And she hated it. She hated realizing she had lost the one thing she thought she would always have, my loyalty. The beauty of it all was that I never had to scream, never had to rage, never had to demand justice. The revenge was in the calm. The revenge was in letting her destroy herself with her own choices, while I built something better in secret. She wanted an open marriage, and now she had it. Only it wasn't the fantasy she thought it would be. It was a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. And I wasn't done yet.
The end didn't come suddenly. It came slowly, like cracks spreading through glass until the whole thing shattered. After her lover's wife confronted him, things at my wife's job started unraveling. She didn't know I had already passed the screenshots on to HR anonymously. I knew his position of authority over her would make it more than just an affair. It was a scandal waiting to explode. At first, she thought she could ride it out, acting normal, pretending nothing had changed. But when he started avoiding her at work, when his texts grew shorter and then stopped altogether, she began to panic. I watched her spiral in real time, pacing the house late at night, staring at her phone like she could will it to buzz. She tried to hide it from me, but I saw every crack in her mask, and I loved every second. Because while she was falling apart, I was rising. I was healthier, sharper, more confident than I'd been in years. And the best part was that she knew it, and she knew she had no part in it. One night, she finally broke. She admitted it. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, tears streaming down her face, confessing that she had been with someone else, that she thought it was harmless, that she never meant to hurt me. She begged me to forgive her, begged me to give her another chance, said she didn't want to lose me. For a moment, I just sat there, silent, letting her words hang in the air like smoke. Then I leaned forward and told her I had known for months. I told her I had the messages, the screenshots, the evidence. I told her I knew exactly who he was and what he had thrown away to be with her. And then I told her that his wife knew too. The look on her face in that moment was something I'll never forget. Pure devastation, like the floor had dropped out from under her. She realized that everything she thought she controlled had slipped through her fingers, that the web of lies she had spun was finally choking her instead of protecting her. She asked me if I was leaving. I didn't answer right away. I let her sit in that silence, let her feel the weight of her own betrayal pressing down on her. Then I told her the truth. I wasn't just leaving. I had already left. My heart, my trust, my loyalty,
everything she had once taken for granted was gone. I told her I had someone else now, someone who valued me, someone who saw me as more than a safety net. Her face twisted with grief and rage all at once, and she tried to lash out, saying I was just as bad, that I had cheated too. But I didn't let her twist it. I reminded her that I hadn't wanted this, that she was the one who opened the door, that she was the one who invited betrayal into our marriage, and all I had done was step through the doorway she created. She tried to argue, but the words died in her throat. Deep down, she knew I was right. The fallout at work came quickly. Her lover was demoted, publicly shamed, his reputation ruined. She wasn't fired, but she might as well have been. No one trusted her, no one respected her, and the whispers followed her through the halls until she could barely stand to show her face. She came home every night defeated, a shell of the arrogant woman who had once thought she could juggle me and him without consequence. And through it all, I remained calm, detached, almost kind. That was the cruelest revenge of all. Not yelling, not throwing her mistakes in her face every day, but treating her like a stranger I no longer cared about. Because indifference cuts deeper than hatred. Eventually, I moved out. I didn't make a scene. I packed my things while she sat on the couch sobbing, begging, promising she could change, that she would do anything to fix it. I told her it was too late. I told her she had killed the marriage the moment she chose him over us. And then I walked out, leaving her with nothing but the ruins she had built with her own hands. Claire never replaced her in my mind, because my wife wasn't even someone worth replacing anymore. Claire was simply the beginning of a new chapter, one where I wasn't chained to someone who saw me as disposable. With Claire, I felt alive, valued, wanted. With my wife, all I saw now was betrayal, weakness, and regret. And I wanted her to live with that regret for the rest of her life. That was the real revenge. Not just exposing her, not just watching her lose everything she thought she had, but knowing that every morning she would wake up and remember that she had destroyed her own marriage, lost her husband, and ruined her reputation, all because she thought she was clever enough to play games. She wanted freedom. She wanted excitement. She wanted an open marriage. And in the end, she got exactly what she asked for. Emptiness, loneliness, and the knowledge that I had walked away stronger while she was left with nothing. That's the justice she earned. And I don't regret a single part of it.